Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer SS&C Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, or best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to see how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with SS&C Blue Prism. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm happy to have as my guest Mark Pedersen, co-founder of CLEVVA, a UK-based virtual agent company and a Blue Prism Technology Alliance partner. I will be talking with Mark about how CLEVVA's front office virtual agents are capable and competent enough to offer a level of customer experience that traditionally could only be provided by a human expert. Welcome, Mark. It's nice to have you on the podcast. Why don't you give us a longer introduction?
Thanks very much for having me, Brad. Lovely to speak to you. And thanks for the introduction. And delighted to be here and speak to you today about our technology. We started our journey about 12 years ago, really trying to see how we could capture the essence of what makes experts operate at that level. And it's been a fascinating journey over the years, and we've really perfected the art and science of leveraging different types of techniques and technologies and developing a platform, a no-code platform that allows you to capture these expert level conversations in sales and service so that you can ultimately service large customer bases or citizens or end users with a similar level of an expert. And what we call them are virtual agents. And so CLEVVA's really spend a lot of time working on the way that you can then essentially scale those conversations through verticals that really require it with large customer bases in financial services, in the telco space, utilities, healthcare, public sector. And then we started partnering with Blue Prism about 3 years ago, where we saw the need to really incorporate the process rigor and access to data that often isn't available through APIs. And that's been a tremendous partnership also with your organization playing in similar verticals and spaces. And it's been a great symbiotic relationship where we automating the conversation piece and then leveraging your digital workers and your platform to do all the process automation and getting data and processing data off the back end and orchestrating those tasks and processes so beautifully.
Excellent. Well, it's really good to have you here, Mark. And we had CLEVVA on the podcast 2.5 years ago. It was episode 96. This is episode 258, believe it or not. So a lot has changed since we last talked with you, and I look forward to catching up on everything having to do with CLEVVA. And it's so relevant to what's happening today, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So Mark, as we engage more with each other and with companies digitally, the automation of certain conversations, especially those shaped by rules, becomes more desirable. For example, as you mentioned, specific sales, service, or support conversations where you want a specific outcome. Why have chatbots not succeeded the way that everyone thought they would? And what are the new alternatives?
Brad, it's a great question. And I think, the sort of the hype cycle of chatbots, everyone saw the potential, the channel. It opened up that sort of self-service, that possibility of having the conversations, but they really have been largely frustrating. And we've all experienced them. And that's something, that we really are focusing on solving is, that ability to understand. And I think that's where it starts with chatbots, is that they don't really understand what the problems are, what the needs are, or the situation. They often are really limited to just answering simple questions or going down very decision tree, very rigid menu driven paths. And that's not how a conversation happens. That's why we really like to speak to often a contact center agent if there's anything vaguely complex, because it's the conversation. You can use your own natural way of articulating your problem, and then you'll have a conversation. So what very good human agents are doing is they're listening, they're trying to understand the situation, they'll often clarify or disambiguate the situation. And that's really what chatbots are struggling to do. They often are just, they will listen for a keyword, or they will, have an intent that then they go down a very rigid path. And that's what we've really focused on doing, is to make it a far more natural human type interaction, where
Mhm.
we do that clarification and that analysis, and then that resolution in the same way that the human experts would. And again, so marrying that back to the digital workers that can then go and execute, or what we've discovered is the problem, or what needs to be done from a transaction perspective. So yeah, we've really solved that problem of bringing the natural side of conversations in, and that's not something that the chatbots have been able to do successfully.
Okay. So in light of that, could you provide an example of what CLEVVA does and specific conversations that your virtual agents automate?
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. So again, we've really focused on making it a no code, so that we could really unlock a lot more of the conversations within those sort of customer service space, where you've got business analysts, you've got a lot of rules, you've got a lot of policies and procedures, and often they need to be consistent and compliant. And often we find the business analysts are the ones that are driving that, and needing to define what that looks like. So much like within the Blue Prism platform, you need this ability to have a no-code environment to capture and build and iterate on those use cases. And the ones that we've really focused on over the years and got really good at within customer service, you've got lead qualification conversations, really good for putting it on a website, or having outbound
Hmm.
conversations where there's a trigger to qualify a lead before handing it off to a sales consultant to then have that closure conversation, or doing even automated lead into the needs analysis, doing renewals and upgrades of contracts. For example, in the telco, your contract's about to expire, those types of conversations, which are quite complicated. There's a lot of options available in terms of the plans and the types of devices, and we really are able to handle those. Query resolution, again, really good in terms of being able to solve problems very quickly in context. When we've got data, we can solve problems far quicker. Even in, so debt management or debt collection, those types of conversations as well, where you'd need to do a payment arrangement. Again, often that's better suited from an automation perspective. There's a lot of, people that there's call avoidance. People know that they owe money. They don't know how to have that conversation. So we're really good at that side. And then not only from a customer perspective, but when we think about employees or staff having HR conversations, if there's disciplinary issues or onboarding of staff, or IT related queries, so shared services type conversations as well. So it's really automating conversations across the enterprise, and even into partner and supplier support from a procurement perspective, or query or account resolution. So where those high volume, time urgent conversations are, where typically it would need to be handled by a human agent, we're able to automate those at scale, and then free up your human workforce to handle more of the lower volume, higher value work. So that's really where
Hmm.
we've been focusing on, Brad.
Got it. Mark, what sets CLEVVA apart from other conversational technologies in terms of its unique features or capabilities?
So, Brad, I think there's a few things. When we really looked at how chatbots were being built when we started the journey 12 years ago, there was a fundamental problem in terms of the architecture. Most of these chatbot technologies use a decision tree or a process flow to try and guide a conversation. And that's fundamentally flawed. We found that it puts the constraints around that conversation. So we've certainly seen a lot of improvements there when you start to think about generative AI and large language models. That's created a little bit more of a dynamic flow, but often those are just summarizing an answer from a knowledge base. So you get this
Hmm.
kind of limitation where you can ask a question and then it can give you an answer, and then you're pretty much done. That's, I think, where those limitations are. And we looked at it from a different paradigm. We really looked at conversations that it's more of a process, or you've got to automate a journey of a conversation. It's not just ask a question, give an answer, and then you're done. Those are, I
Hmm.
think, quite simple. There's some chatbots that are, I think, particularly powered now by generative AI that are doing an okay job of that. But if there's any context or there's any need to really go through a clarification, an analysis, and a resolution, it's very, very hard to do. So our technology is really focused on making that easy from a no-code perspective. It's really being able to build out those object-orientated models that you can then clarify like a human expert. We work with the experts and obviously leveraging generative AI to determine what are all the dimensions or the factors to consider when solving a particular problem. And we help the teams that are building these virtual agents model them out and connect these objects together and enrich it with large language models, enrich it with the data that you get from the systems so that you get a really rich experience and this ability to handle these conversations in a way as if you're talking to a human expert. They will disambiguate you, asking clarifying questions. Did you mean this? Did you mean that? They will
Mhm.
know a lot about you, and they'll ultimately be able to clarify what the problem is, determine the goal, and then move through an analysis of your problem or your need, and then find the right solution, and then execute through the digital workers. So we've taken a very different approach. It's more multidimensional. It's
Mhm.
using data points, and it's really, again, removing that decision tree, that very rigid approach that most of the chatbot platforms are taking, and boosting it with the power of generative AI to essentially along the way be able to listen for sentiment. If somebody is upset or negative, you can handle that. People answer different questions in different ways, so we can handle the synonyms. People can also change context. Somebody might be having conversation around a particular issue, and then they want to talk about something else. So we can
Mhm.
handle change of context. And those are all important parts of conversation. And so we've been able to automate that and think about things very differently and then provide all of that rich data into process mining tools, things like a Blue Prism process intelligence, amazing tools that can consume the data that we gather to continuously
Mhm.
improve and expand and remove the friction around those conversations. So I think that's, again, one of the benefits of this data centric approach. Whereas
Mhm.
if it's very rigid, sort of menu driven or too process flow driven, you don't get that rich insight that we're able to gain to continuously improve those experiences and expand what the virtual agents can do.
So it sounds like Cleva understands that most conversations are not linear in nature.
Yeah, that would be a good summary of that. They're dynamic and they need to be able to change along the way, and you need to adjust to that conversation and to keep it on track as well in terms of resolving those goals either immediately
Mhm.
or being able to cycle back and address each of the issues that are coming out of the conversation. So, yeah, in summary, it's not linear, it's really quite dynamic, and you need a technology like us to be able to model and manage those types of dynamic conversations.
Mhm. What types of organizations do you find are best suited to deploying Cleva virtual agents?
Brad, we've really focused on very large organizations that have got a lot of customers, a lot of conversations that are coming into contact centers or happening internally. So we're finding typically within financial services, large banks, insurers, looking at those pension type conversations as well. Telco is also an area that we know really well. We work in the utilities, also healthcare, public sector, and we're finding there's a lot of opportunities within the travel and hospitality space. But again, where those large volumes are and where there's complexity, lots of different policies and procedures and products, and where you need it to be consistent and compliant. So those are the areas that we're focusing on.
Okay. And Mark, can your virtual agents have conversations across multiple channels, or are they restricted to just one?
What we've been able to do is essentially build a platform you can then have the conversation logic built once, and then you can use it across any channel. So, for example, if a conversation needs to happen through a text channel like SMS or even a WhatsApp or one of those, or through a web chatbot, we can handle those. And great thing is that if you're needing to plug in voice, you can use the same logic. So you really get that consistency across channel. So the short answer is yes, absolutely, we can do it cross channel. And ultimately, that's, one of the major benefits is that if something changes, a different product changes, or there's a different policy, you just change it once, and then automatically works across all the different channels. So that is really a key differentiator in terms of how the CLEVVA platform set up. And you, again, can also augment human agents as well. And you don't have to go and train the thousands of human agents. They
Hmm.
can just leverage a virtual agent as a co-pilot as well. So you get that consistency across all channels, including the augmented channels.
That's terrific. Mark, you've mentioned generative AI a few times, and I do want to talk about that. Since the last time we had Cleva on the podcast, the world has literally been flipped upside down with the arrival of Gen AI. So I'm really interested to hear more about how Cleva leverages Gen AI technologies in its virtual agent platform, and what specific benefits or enhancements this integration brings to your clients. Could you
Yeah.
speak to that?
Yeah. Absolutely, Brad. I think the large language model, so the language capability has been an incredible boost to our solution. We were before this sort of advent of incorporating the large language models into these types of solutions. We were using the more traditional natural language understanding methodologies, and they were really, really good to a point where you could train them, take a lot of effort to train all the different intents or what you wanted to do, and then all the different utterances or how, the different ways that people ask those questions or say certain things. So it's a lot of effort, time, and cost to do that. And what generative AI and the large language models give us is out of the box language capability. So you've got this ability from a speed to value to just plug it into whatever large language model suitable,
Hmm.
and you're literally it understands all of the language that you're talking to within that particular domain. So again, from a speed to value, it's been fantastic, and it's helping us to handle a lot of those sort of unstructured conversations. Again, where somebody could ask anything or any number of things in any way that they like out of the box, and sort of guiding that and driving that through, picking up a sentiment, the change of context, like I mentioned, or being able to ask a question and then being able to accept any variation or synonym of the way that that's being answered, again, out of the box without having to train or code anything. So
Hmm.
that really allows us to expand the scope of what we can do, and provide more value more quickly, so it can behave like a human expert, because it's trained with the entire corpus of human language. So out of the box, you can just plug straight into that. And then this ability to handle multiple languages as well. The language translation is also a huge boost as well for organizations that need that without a huge amount of kind of training and retraining on that. So that's been amazing for us. And the benefits that we've brought in terms of handling the power of generative AI is, we've playing that conversation orchestration layer. So we know that generative AI is really only as powerful as its prompting, and being able to provide the boundaries, being able to set the guardrails and to limit those hallucinations that we've all experienced is really where Clever is adding a lot of value to teams that are struggling a little bit with that. So we've got this ability to manage those prompts, and again, the boundaries around what that conversation will be about or what the response will be about. And doing that and orchestrating that through a conversation, keeping that context, and then bringing in data from the systems using digital workers, and being able to orchestrate that in a coherent fashion is really where we've been able to leverage the power of generative AI. So it's been a tremendous boost to what we've already been doing. We can just do it now faster, and again at a lower cost.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the prompt engineering aspect, because that definitely makes a big difference. And so it's neat that the virtual agents can diminish the challenges that sometimes happen with the way that the LLMs are prompted, and make that more effective in the settings that you're working in. Well, Gen AI is, as you said, it's known for its ability to generate human-like text and responses. And a lot of the concern today is around the accuracy and the reliability of the answers that may come out of a LLM. How does Cleva ensure that the data is accurate and reliable when you're integrating your agents with Gen AI? What measures do you have in place or things like that to address biases or inaccuracies in the generated content?
Yeah, Brad, the thing with Clever is it's not just left to the LLM to answer the question. So what we do is we incorporate the organization's knowledge base. We incorporate the experts, the subject matter or domain experts into the training of the particular responses or the types of conversations that are going to be orchestrated by Clever. So it's really using a team and leveraging large language models, the knowledge base. But ultimately,
Hmm.
you've got the human experts that are the ones that are fundamentally part of the training process and the retraining process, or in terms of refining where there are possibly inaccuracies or where we picked up through the data some friction points or some problems. So it's a platform that allows those feedback loops to really go through and have the human experts and the team, whether they're really experienced service agents or sales consultants, part of that team that's really looking after the conversational process that will basically be used to resolve a query or to have a sales conversation. So it's not just left to the large language model, it's incorporated into it. And that fine tuning is consistently happening all the time. And when we do leverage a large language model, again, there's very clear. It's done in a way that really maximizes the use of the large language model in a safe
Hmm.
way, but it can also understand what's in a knowledge base, for example, and we'll defer to that first. And if it
Hmm.
can't get an answer out, it can then go into a large language model and can also manage the expectation of the customer or the end user to say, this is what we believe to be true if it's using the large language model, and then it can provide a response. It can ask if they've got any questions. It can also feed that back to the team to say, these are the types of questions that we're getting. There may not be a sense in terms of confidence that it's 100% correct. So it'll
Yep.
feed it back through that feedback loop. So again, it's not just left to the large language model. It's really part of the team. But we know organizations have invested for often decades into a knowledge base. So we want to leverage that. And again, the human experts are ultimately the ones that we're wanting to make sure that they're comfortable with the way that it's being prompted. They understand the dimensions of a particular
Hmm.
domain. And we use that as part of the process of building out these conversations. So it's really a blended approach that we take.
Okay, that makes a ton of sense. Thank you, Mark. Well, in the context of conversational automation, could you perhaps share some examples of how Cleva is using Gen AI to have richer, more effective conversations, and also talk about where this is headed for your company in 2024?
Brad, I think what we're all about is how do we unlock, in terms of these experiences, often customer facing experiences
Hmm.
where we can automate them in the opportunities where, for example, in the insurance space, where a life claim, somebody may be diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and often the experience is quite, it's traumatic, of course. And when they do reach out to, their insurer, they often feel processed, and there's a lot of more sort of administrative processing that's happening. So we really bringing more empathy into that conversation. We're really trying to automate as much of the through to the back office, asking for documentation around a doctor's letter or diagnosis that we can automate and get as much of the context and the data from systems or from letters that are available, and then focusing more on the person, on the human, on helping them. So in an insurance claim, life insurance claim, being able to understand what their needs are and marrying those back to the benefits that they have. So those are really exciting, interesting use cases that we're working with insurers on. So in a claim, what are their needs? Are they needing to access benefits that may help family that's traumatized and help them with delivering groceries, being able to help them navigate and get the support that they need as they're going through a difficult situation. And in terms of also within healthcare, we're really looking to see how we can do triaging. Again, if somebody's worried about maybe a symptom that they have and they maybe don't have the money or the time, or that they're wanting to have a conversation with a virtual agent to try and see whether they do actually need to go and see a professional, a doctor or a specialist. So those are some really exciting areas that we're playing in terms of triaging, even
Hmm.
sort of secondary care in the markets that we work in. A lot of them have got challenges in terms of getting access to a specialist or a GP. And when they do, we know those specialists are overwhelmed. They have limitations in terms of the time that they have with the patient. So they may be limited to 10 minutes, and then they've still got to wrap that conversation up, communicate everything to the patient. And we're looking to help in that space where there's a lot of great technology summarizing a particular appointment, but off the back of that, you can have a virtual agent answering questions, follow-up questions, or
Hmm.
helping that specialist in terms of freeing up more time and giving that patient comfort in terms of any questions that they need clarified or around their
Hmm.
treatment plan. So again, healthcare is a big space for us, and we're really focusing on that going into the next year. And travel, Brad, for us has been an interesting one because we all experienced COVID lockdown. Travel literally was put on pause, and it's really come back. Everyone's traveling again. And I think the industry's really struggled because a lot of the travel workers over COVID had to go and find other work in other industries. And now there's a huge gap in terms of skills and staff shortages. So there's great opportunity for us in travel and hospitality to automate things like customer service, complaints handling, or those types of use cases. We're doing a lot of work with some big travel and hospitality groups in that space. And I think again, there's sort of big telco utility areas that we continue to play in. Lots of opportunity there, resolving customer service queries through various channels, and also looking at the voice channel. So that's where we're going into 2024 is how do we automate more of the voice channels, whether they're inbound conversations that typically would be left to wait for a human agent to respond. That could often take 20, 30 minutes, and that's not a great experience. So how do we automate more
Sure.
of those in a natural way? And also outbound. So outbound voice conversations typically also very poor experiences. We're focusing on making those more human-like, more intelligent, and being able to achieve more through outbound conversations in various industries as well. So those are just some of the areas that we really are focusing
Hmm.
on going into 2024.
Those are really good examples, Mark. Thank you for those. Well, Mark, the partnership between Blue Prism and CLEVVA has been really successful to date. Could you just talk a little bit further about how Blue Prism digital workers and CLEVVA virtual agents complement one another?
Yeah, no problem, Brad. I mean, it was really for us a natural fit where we really focused on the conversation piece of front office conversations and handling all of the complexity around those unstructured conversations and bringing structure to it. So, what we've been able to do is integrate with Blue Prism digital workers through the queues. So, once we've had the conversation, we've agreed on what the next actions are or outcomes are, we can pass those into the digital worker queues, and so we've got those connectors working really well, being able to drive a lot more volume into the work queues. And those digital workers can then pick up whatever it is that they need to do, whether it's an initial customer 360, go and get all of the data that you need to bring into the conversation to hyper personalize it. So there's a lot of work that those digital workers are doing. And then at the end of the conversation, well, what did we agree on? What is that update to the policy? What is that transaction? What is that reminder that needs to be set? So those digital workers are going in and doing all of that work. So that's really at the heart of that symbiotic relationship where you've got the virtual agents handling the conversation and then working with those digital workers to do the processing and getting the data, updating the data in the systems. That's been amazing. I think what's been also exciting is integrating with Blue Prism Process Intelligence, which is a important layer in terms of understanding what's going on in these conversations and using data to define where those friction points are. Where can you improve? Where can you expand the scope of what these virtual agents can do? So that's been exciting in terms of taking the conversational data, really using the large language models to extract as much context into those conversation, the outputs of the data, and pushing that into the process intelligence. So that's been able to provide deep insight and this ability
Mm.
to then essentially run scenario plans around how you would tweak, what you would change. And that's informing what the center of excellences are able to do where there's a great return on value or return on effort for the work that they're
Yeah.
going to do to improve that. And it's interesting, it also picking up things that have got nothing to do with automation. It's got to do with policy or strategy. So there's data that's coming into process intelligence and the insights that you're gaining out of that's got nothing to do with automation. So there's huge value to the business of that as well.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. The idea of using conversational data as an input to process mining. That's definitely something that has evolved since the last time we talked with you guys. And there's so much log data and other things that normally get fed in, but the conversational data, I think, is really a nice innovation in that whole realm. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, Mark, looking forward to the future, what innovations or developments do you envision for CLEVVA? And how do you see the role of conversational process automation technology changing in the coming years?
So in terms of innovation, we're really seeing your ability to have more natural conversations through high volume channels, things like voice, as I mentioned. That's something that's not going to go away. We all like to use voice. So whether it's through a phone call, we're looking to how do we automate the conversation instead of speaking to a human agent, how do you speak to a virtual agent and have as good, if not better, experience? Or for example, on a WhatsApp, we're seeing voice, people sending voice notes. How do we unlock voice in all of those different channels? What's also quite exciting is this construct of avatars as well. If you are in more of an interactive channel, like on an app or on the web, bringing in avatars, bringing a bit more of a personality to it. So that's, again, just improving that experience. Again, working with a greater variety of large language models, we understand that that's really important to pick the right one and to try and fine tune and really, again, per domain or per area, make sure you're working with the right large language models. And those are really moving faster. We're trying to keep pace with that and make sure that those are incorporated based on the verticals of the use cases. And another area which is for us important is this language translation, working with a lot of organizations that service global customer bases. Again, that experience is nothing quite like being able to have a conversation in your native language. So trying to unlock more and more accurately and consistently the language translations with as little training effort or retraining effort. So this ability to also increase the speed of those continuously improving and expanding the scope of what the virtual agents can do. And that's fundamentally part of why we've integrated with Blue Prism Process Intelligence because of the richness of the data. Historically, contact centers were always, that was your sort of front of shop where we would get all of the insight. But I think a lot of that is lost in poor wrap-up notes or this inability to coordinate that data from humans who are under pressure to take the next call. They don't have time to wrap up a call. Voice analytics has taken, I think, a huge step. But again, we can now blend the technologies and we can use the conversational piece where proactively we can not reactively look at the conversation. We can actually proactively drive that conversation through to a resolution and again, analyze, be very critical in terms of always looking to improve. How can we make it more efficient? How can we pick up and expand in terms of what the virtual agent can do? So process intelligence has been a strategic investment in terms of how do we leverage that more and more. And what we're excited about is your next gen platform, and more of those products leveraging things like decision, in terms of making what is the next best offer or next best action. That's something we can leverage with decision or UX builder, really looking to see how we can incorporate our virtual agents more natively into those types of interfaces. So it's always got a virtual agent to handle any query or question or any conversation that an interface possibly lacks, which is more transactional. So we've got a quite an exciting roadmap in terms of integrating with more of the Blue Prism next generation products. And yeah, just evolving more over time in terms of building accelerators that are specific to industries and use cases. So we can get that speed to value for our customers and can learn and improve. And again, every implementation we do is fed back into an accelerator or a template set. That's really what we're investing into to make sure we can help more customers and help them more cost effectively.
Well, a lot of exciting things going on with CLEVVA, and it's been really fun talking with you, Mark, and just hearing how things have changed since we talked 2.5 years ago. thank you for being on the podcast just to share all of your thoughts and your expectations for the coming years in this very interesting space. No doubt digital agents are going to increase in importance in the business world. There's so many different scenarios. You've talked to a lot of them, but I think it's just going to continue to play a very significant role. And it's great to see how well they are working together with digital workers. I think the two together make each other better. So thanks again for being here. I appreciate it. And I wish you the very best.
Brad, thanks so much for having me. And yeah, we're very excited about this partnership and expanding into to more of the products that you guys are rolling out in your next gen. And it's exciting. It's an exciting space. And we believe there's so many more conversations to automate and how you can do it with a virtual agent. So looking forward to the journey and chatting to you again soon with, I'm sure, some more exciting updates from both of our sides. But thanks for having me and all the best.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you've heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how SS&C Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.